Hello and welcome to another installation of Tech Talk. You ask the questions and we will do our best to answer them. All right, guys, what have we been asked this week? What are some of the hot topics?
Well, I always get the questions around grouting, how to grout, why is my grouting getting undone, and grouting issues. So I think let's have a chat around that.
Sure, okay. Hey, Kurt, what about you kick off with some of your input on grouting? You know,
Good question. I guess it all revolves around a lot of the time about the material that you're working with on site, and a few little tips and tricks on jobs when we're working with either soft concrete, concrete that might be falling apart a fair bit. Is we can use a technique on pre-grouting in a 50-60 metal bond diamond. That's going to fill up some of your larger holes. And pack that floor with a bit of goodness. So that's one method we would use, at the before grouting stage, before leading into the 120 grouts. If the floor is still looking like it needs that strength, and you want to try and get that bond a lot tighter, you could probably merge into a pre-densification, which is using a potassium densifier I would recommend. And that will strengthen the lines of the pores of the concrete, and try and get those holes and those pores ready to take that grout in the 120 stage.
Okay. So essentially, when we're on site, we need to assess the materials that we're working with, and then put together a plan to match those materials. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in relation to the densifier, how long should that generally be on the floor?
No, I guess that's a good question, Mike. We get asked that a lot. I really like for us. I really think that first densification. I think a lot of guys are really in the mindset that they need to keep that densifier down for quite a long period of time. A lot of guys will like to keep it overnight. That's which essentially is really hardening the crap out of those 120 scratches or any that profile that you've left from your grouting. We find that moving densifier quite early helps the process move forward a lot quicker. Now, when I'm talking early, I'm talking once it's pretty much dry after that first blood coat, or really just tacking off. We'll go into that straight away with our 50 resins, and we'll still be reactivating at that time to help loosen it up and get that material to flush through the tooling a lot easier as well. We will put a densifier coat down for a long period of time, at least a minimum of 8 to 12 hours, and we'll probably put it in the lower stages, say 100, and leave that overnight if that works in with how the process has worked that day. Only because we need a good tool that can remove that densifier as well. If we started leaving densifier highs up in the 200s, and there is tooling that's going to, the specialty tooling will remove that, no worries. But if we're going to leave a density for a long period of time, 8 to 10 hours or more, I'm going to do it at the lower stages, so at pretty much at 100, and come back and remove that in the morning and continue on with the process.
What's the best way to know?
Well, I guess it all comes back just to running a sample on the job. If your feet on the ground and you're expecting, you've opened up this floor and you're seeing some things that aren't the norm, and you might need to change that process up a little bit. If you've got any doubt, and we always say is fall back on that sample. It takes a couple of hours of your time if you set up right. Run that process all the way through to start, from start to finish. And that's going to determine what your end result's going to be, and it's going to pick up any little issues that you're going to find in your process.
What would it take to do a sample, would you say?
It would definitely, a sample, I would say no more than 2 hours.
Okay.
If everything's set up right, you're prepared to do a sample, and if that becomes part of your process, is when you rock up to site, you have your sample kit there. It shouldn't be it should not take any time at all, and it's going to save you in the long run.
Okay, so I'm assuming if we're doing 150 square meters in an average of 3 days, we're probably doing that 400 grit polish in day 3. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the feedback that we get from the market is that I'm doing 400 right now and the grout's pulling out. So that would suggest to me that they're 3 days into their 3-day schedule. And in order to repair that, we're going back to what stage, Kurt?
Well, to repair that, if you're getting considerable pull out, you know you're going to have to go back to a metal stage, which would be at 50, 60. You're going to need to open that floor up and restart the process again.
So we're back to day 2. So we turned a 3-day schedule into a 5-day schedule, essentially.
Exactly.
So if we're thinking that a 2-hour investment into a sample is too much, we're probably quite far off from being correct in that, aren't we?
100%.
It's a good investment of time. Okay.
It is, definitely.
Terrific. All right. Well, thank you for that. So key points would be, do a sample when you get on site, assess for the materials that you're working with, understand the materials and what the grout does and what the densifier does to yield the best result, and also understanding the materials. Do a sample, get some security, get a plan together and stick to the plan. Is that right?
Spot on.
Sounds like that's the rock up way. All right, grouse. Thanks everyone for the input. Thanks for Mike and to Daniel for bringing the questions from the market. Hope everyone has a really super weekend.
Thanks, guys.
And I just also wanted to add an extra note that it's it is fantastic to have Freddie Mercury. I mean, Kurt from Rock Up. Great.
Stay tuned. What character it's going to be next week?
Cut it in or out if you want.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you very much, Freddie Mercury, coming out for this special occasion.